And now we are ready to have the third session of the day, which is Innovations in Medical Devices and Diagnostics. Advances in the life science will continue to have a far-reaching impact on virtually every aspect of our society. It's critical to provide the highest quality of medical care, treatment options in the most effective and efficient manner. This panel will address the future of technologies on the horizon in diagnostics and what are the gaps that need to be filled by startups and researchers to provide the country's most robust healthcare system. I would like to invite on stage Dr. Sonal Saxena, who's the director of Department of Microbiology, Lady Hardinge Medical College. I would also like to invite Dr. Ravi Gaur, Chief Operating Officer of Oncquest Laboratories. I would further like to invite Dr. Kamini Khillan, MD Pathology, Senior Consultant, Sir Ganga Hospital. I would like to also invite Dr. Sunita Chauhan, Director, Robotics and Mechatronics at the Monash University. And I would like to call upon stage Mr. Rajesh Singh, who's the CEO of Wish Foundation. Mr. Filipe Assoreira, CEO, Nano 4. Dr. Sanjay Sharma, APTA, FTSE, Yostra Labs, founder of APTA, FTSE, and Yostra Labs. So I would now like to invite Dr. Sonal Saxena to come and present the keynote address.
Good afternoon. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers, particularly Dr. Singh, for depositing this faith in me to take this important topic on innovations in medical devices and diagnostics. And I would like to begin by saying that knowing is not enough, and application is more important. Similarly, willing is not enough. We have to perform or do. So anything that I may have missed out or I may not be able to cover, I hope the audience will pardon me for that. Now, when WHO talked about universal health coverage in 2019, they made it their policy that every country should adopt the UHC mandate, and for the UHC mandate, access to healthcare technology is primary. And these technologies should be high quality, they should be affordable, available, accessible, at the same time appropriate to that particular population or subgroup of population. At the same time, the task is being shifted from the diagnostic services being handled by a trained doctor to somebody who is a layman or a paramedic or an ASHA worker who is able to perform these tests, use these devices, and give a diagnostic intimation to the patient. These advances could be in the form of medical devices, they could be an assistive devices, artificial intelligence, or mobile or e-health solutions. And if we look at the future, we see a very aging population, because right now we are probably the youngest nation in the world. We have the maximum population in the youngest age group, and slowly we are heading towards an era where we'll have the maximum population would be the aging population, and their needs would be very different. Push for a personalized treatment. We, as allopathists, have always believed that the treatment is meant for everybody at every particular. There are no personal predilections to treatment, but we are slowly moving away from that, and we are moving towards personalized treatments, and we are also increasing the availability of healthcare, particularly in India, where programs like Ayushman Bharat are making healthcare accessible to even in the remotest corners of the country. As we grow further, the regulatory control, their scrutiny, and the initiatives also grow, and all these in totality will escalate our costs. So to deliver reliable devices that will provide diagnostic, monitoring, and therapeutic capabilities which the market is going to demand, the focus has to shift on newer materials or on advancing manufacturing technologies. Now, these utility of innovations could be patient-centric, could be healthcare-centric, or it could be in terms of sustainability. Any innovation that has to happen when it deals with diagnostics and devices has to address these main issues. When it comes to patient, it has to address the issue of safety, or it has to anchor some benefit to the patient, maybe a reduced stay in the hospital, maybe some psychological benefit or an experiential benefit to the patient, and the recovery time has to reduce. When it comes to healthcare, obviously the cost becomes a very major issue. So if the treatment cost is reduced, if there is a shorter stay of hospital, then fewer attendances are required, there are lesser staff, or even a lower level healthcare provider is able to perform that activity as compared to a trained doctor, it makes a lot of impact on the healthcare delivery systems. Then sustainability, as we move towards eco-friendly approaches, the waste minimization, the use of power or solar or alternative powers usage, and the travel component has to reduce for the patient while traveling to a healthcare society. Now, these technological advances as they move forward could be just a minor change in the system which is already existing. Now, these will have little potential for different outcomes and impact, but there may be a significant modification where the impact will be little higher, or it could be a totally novel technology or a design where the existing technology doesn't carry any backbench. Now, as we see clinical diagnostic assays, as I'm a microbiologist, I mostly deal with infectious diseases, and as the rapidity of the test increases, my confidence in that particular test decreases, as you can see here. Can I have a pointer? Now, as the methods which are direct are going to consume days and hours, but I'm very confident. Yeah, thank you. But I am very confident because what happens is that these direct methods help me to visualize. So what I see, I believe. But when it comes to the indirect method, when I'm looking for certain antibodies or a response of the body to a particular infection, then my confidence level also goes down as a medical person. So what are the needs when we come to diagnostic assays? Point of care is a term which we are very fond of speaking and very fond of talking about it. So any point of care is what? Very often the point of care gets misused, but it has to satisfy the assured criteria. That means it has to be affordable. I can't have a point of care test when it costs 2,000 rupees, where the same test can be done at my laboratory for 20 rupees. It should be sensitive and specific, therefore it should be accurate, it should be user-friendly, it should be rapid and robust, equipment-free. Like in the morning in the inauguration, there was something about insulin being kept in refrigerator and no access to electricity in most of the villages. Similarly, if I have to centrifuge a sample before running a POC, I don't have electricity, then my problem is the same. And it should be able to be delivered to the patient, right to the patient care. Then it can be an innovative biodesign, or it could be the mobile health technologies which have taken the world by storm. So when we talk about these, it could be a technological advancement, a technological shift, or a technological spectrum, like we said, minor, major, similar to this. And our concept is to reduce the turnaround time and communication of result in a faster manner. So when we look at the technological advancement, we see that from microscopy, we've shifted to nucleic acid technologies. And the similar is a technological shift, but slowly all these nucleic acid technologies are also shifting their base in a way that it becomes much more communicable to the patient. Similarly, a technological spectrum. There are standalone tests which a person can do at home. For example, a home HIV testing, just like a pregnancy ICT. Similarly, there are HIV testing now which ensure confidentiality. Similarly, there are tests which a paramedic can do, and finally, there are complicated tests which can be done only in complicated laboratories. When we move from the biodesign process, we see that the need gets structured onto just few common needs. We are talking about unmet needs here, and we come to realize that they all bring down to a few needs which have to develop into a concept and which will travel into a final concept series. And this prototype, till it becomes a final concept, will go through a lot of stages. It will go through the intellectual property stage, the clinical evaluation stage, regulatory stage, business model. How is it feasible in my patient, in your patient? Is it feasible in primary healthcare or in secondary healthcare? So all those relevant models have to be developed. Then the mobile health solutions. The image-based diagnostics and the sensor-based diagnostics are going to revolutionize healthcare in the coming 5 to 10 years. Now we wear our watches which tell us our heart rates in a while ago. Earlier, about 10 years ago, there used to be a line in front of the antenatal OPD in the hospital just to get their blood pressure checked. And now most of the people have these BP instruments at home and they already check it before they come to the hospital. So what are the various trends which are going on? These are inexpensive mass-produced components have come up. 3D printing technology is going to revolutionize the prosthesis department. Artificial intelligence, lab on a chip. GeneXpert has modified the detection of tuberculosis, has taken molecular diagnostics at a primary healthcare center under RNTCP. Wearable healthcare monitorings. We've all become fitness freak after wearable healthcare technologies. Technology fusion, miniaturization. As we go smaller and smaller, we have implantable devices, and the age of Star Trek is looking like a reality to all of us. Improved quality inspection, an aging global population, and the growth of emerging market. All of these are actually fueling all these innovations. What is slowing down is the regulatory approvals. Then, are there any problems? Multiple. There are many researchers here, many innovators here who will concur with me when I say that there are many things which remain in the pilot issues only. Lack of funding, lack of regulation, lack of support from peers, from seniors. There are no regulatory protocols. There are high costs involved in research. $80,000 are spent to create a molecule before it comes to the market, which is going to run for $1 or $2. So sustainability and scalability is again a problem. Then comes challenge as a medico. Is this technology feasible for my hospital or my healthcare? Should I go with it? So there is a lot of disconnect between the user and the seller. The user will buy something depending on the need of the patient, enhanced clinical value. If I'm going to get something for my patient, the volume of the tests that are being ordered, the ease of performance that I have in the test, is it able to do multiple sample techniques? Is it able to match my physical requirement? Or is it going to require a specific infrastructure, maybe a completely air-conditioned environment? All this is going to add on to my cost, so I may not be okay to buy it. Corporate decision would be totally different. It would be a market opportunity, a competitive offering. So we have to find a link between the two in order to have something which is going to sell in the market. Then how much is actually too much? If I'm getting a machine to do urine microscopy at rupees 500 per test, or training a technician to see in a microscope at rupees 20. So any diagnostic test before being used by the healthcare has to answer certain questions. That does it reduce any diagnostic uncertainty? Does it actually influence any treatment options? Does it have any impact on the patient of outcome and society? The most important one, the high quality clinical studies. Do patients undergoing these diagnostic tests have better outcomes? Or in my hospital or ward, is it actually going to be patient useful or cost beneficial? So whenever you try to innovate, you try to answer these questions. And moving from traditional to modern technologies, this kind of comparative effectiveness is a mandate before we go ahead. Now, these are just a few tests which I found from the WHO Innovative Medical Devices list, where they have simple things. Some of these are commercial. These are category 1, which are already available or are being commercialized in the next few years to come. For example, the LED phototherapy unit, SMS smoke cessation systems, reusable neonatal suction systems. And most of these are meant for the mandate of UHC and are meant for being used at a primary healthcare. Then category 2 is for products which are not under the commercialized listing. For example, a simple one-table anesthesia machine, a portable on-site cell sorter and counter for HIV and malaria diagnosis. So decision support systems, and these are one of the few things. Then from the Indian landscape, I found a few from PIRAC website, where medical technology, automated immunodiagnostics, AI-based, these are the ones which are being supported. The most important of them was the iQuant analyzer, which talked about the rapid multiple testings could be done on a single platform with a single prick. Then a lab on a chip design, which is there. A lab on a chip design which could detect cholesterol, creatinine, glucose, which has been fabricated, and this is in the pre-marketing stages. Surface modifications of certain biodesign materials, novel peptide image, biomarkers, so many other things are right now in the trial stages. So with this, I would like to end, and I would like to acknowledge a very good friend of mine who's a mission director with BIRAC DBT for helping me with this topic. And as a medical person, I would believe that maybe someday I would have the integration between the biomedical engineering and a doctor to such an extent where I would be able to say, Alexa, what's wrong with my patient? So that is the kind of artificial intelligence to augment what my clinical and my medical acumen says. With that, I would like to wind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sonal Saxena. May I now ask Dr. Ravi Gaur to start this panel and have a discussion around innovations in medical devices and diagnostics. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think we'll have a very free flow panel discussion. I think we probably exchange our ideas sitting across. Thank you so much, Dr. Sonal, I think, for speaking about giving insight what's really happening in the diagnostic industry. I think the first thing probably what struck me here was the disconnect between user and the seller. I think that's what it is the most important part, and that's what the innovations are meant for. We're supposed to have a disruptive innovations so that the seller probably is forced to accept that, or otherwise they will not survive because their product is expensive, the product is giving them better returns. But here, a test which can cost 100 rupees, if you have an innovative device which costs 10 rupees, probably the seller will have no option but to adopt that. And that's where I think probably today's the conference is here is the innovations, and we're talking about innovations in diagnostic and devices. We had, just to give you 1 minute background on that, yesterday we had a pre-conference workshop in AI in healthcare, and there were a lot of good interactions, a lot of good ideas. But frankly speaking, what really, there was youngsters, the intellectual people, maybe the industry people were all out there. But there was a, everybody youngster had a bigger idea. I can do this, they have an Excel sheet, they have plans, but maybe the conventional or the senior guy says, this looks good, will it work on ground? Yes, some ideas look up, very good up there, and some ideas really don't work on ground, they're excellent. I think this is what the forum, the opportunity, and of course the InnoCuris led by Ravi Singh probably gives us an opportunity to talk and interact with each other. I think firstly I'd like to thank Ravi Singh to create this forum and will take us the innovation to the next level. With this quick line of, I think we have one introduction to my Sonal you already heard. She's a Professor Director of Microbiology, Lady Hardinge. I have Dr. Khillan, I think she's a senior pathologist and from Ganga Hospital, an expert in blood banking and quality. Then we have Dr. Chauhan. She's from Monash University, Australia. She's worked very well in robotics and intelligence diagnostics. Rajesh Singh is CEO of Wish Foundation. Probably he has to give a lot more to insight what's really happening outside Delhi on tier 3, tier 4 cities in public health. And that's where the unmet needs are probably the maximum. Then we have with me Filipe. Filipe is CEO of a company called Nano 4. And he is an expert of nanotechnology and president of Portugal Biotech Industry Organization also. And he's an expert actually what we're talking about, the user-seller disconnect, because he works on a strategy the pre-launch, launch, and the post-launch, on how to make it successful. We'll probably hear from it during the session. And on that last, we have Dr. Sanjay. He is worked on a telemedicine, but he's currently working in a pediatric surgery, diabetic foot, diabetic womb, remote care, and probably much, much more in diabetes. A lot of innovative things are happening out here. With this, I will talk about, let's start the session here. And when the topic came to me, to my mailbox, is unmet need. I was really not able to understand what is the unmet need. Because if you look at the need, I mean, if I'm staying in Delhi, Medanta is in front of me, every need is fulfilled in healthcare. But then if you have go to urban areas, go to rural areas, different geography, different set of population, probably the needs are different. That somebody can afford, somebody can't afford. Like somebody who's staying right opposite Ganga Hospital, he can't afford to go on an OPD consultation. That all the facilities available. Some people are far away because there is no road connectivity out there. Probably how do they reach the hospital? That's an unmet need in healthcare. So defining an unmet need, that was something which probably came into, it created me think what could be, how do you define the unmet need in healthcare? A lot of migration is happening from rural area to urban. Urban poor people are increasing. Now, because of that, there's overcrowding, more infections happening. There is the pollution, the respiratory disorders. There's a lifestyle change. People are working overtime, traveling, stress. Those are non-communicable diseases. Then there is, because of so much of the traffic and the people in rush, there are accidents and trauma. Even crime has increased because stabbing and probably the road rage. Then the climate change again has led to. All this has led to effect on health. And I think as the lifespan grows, but what they say is the disability life index, that means the how many years of physical fitness you have in the life, that physical number of years have reduced. Probably the year of lifespan is gone, but you're not fit enough. I think the innovations are needed there. To that, as long as we are alive, we are working till the last day. With this, like I thought over it, so what really happens in the healthcare? So there's somebody falls ill, these sorts, he seeks medical care or healthcare, gets it, fine. Then what happens is, it consults a health provider, yes, starts the treatment, then next, completes the treatment, and the healthcare problem is resolved. That's the need completely met. Now, what happens, what's really happening in majority of India, probably 60% of India at least, definitely we can say that, people are somewhere seeking medical care, the consulting healthcare provider, they may be starting treatment, but not able to complete the treatment, and health problem remains unresolved. So I think, and even every step, there are some population who cannot even approach healthcare facility. Some of them cannot even consult a healthcare provider. Some percentage cannot start treatment because of limitation. Some cannot complete treatment. And these are all unmet needs. And I think those are to be addressed. And with this, I was able to come up with a definition of unmet need, which I thought, let me read it out for you. Unmet medical need is defined conventionally in terms of availability and adequacy of treatments, pharmaceuticals, or otherwise. Treatments may not exist for certain diseases, or treatment exists but have become ineffective, or treatment exists but delivery mechanism or the formulation, the process is inadequate. Disease burden, which is expressed in terms of disability adjusted as life years, number of years lost due to poor health, disability or premature death, all this actually adds to the unmet medical need actually out here. So there is a continued unmet medical need which is growing across wide range of population with a wide range of rare diseases. And what Sonal has said about it, that there is because of the inadequate investment, because of an anticipated lack of commercial viability, but this is not being fulfilled. There is a need, but viability is not there, so nobody is addressing that. think I'll probably put my first, move on from here and talk my first question to Rajesh out here. Uh, Rajesh, I will, we will probably have formulated couple of questions, which probably say that tell us what is the unmet need in terms of your organization, what you've been doing experience, followed by any innovation you worked, what challenges you're facing, what's the impact. So I think, Rajesh, I think you have worked into the public health space, community health space. You have present a lot of, I think, work you're doing. We'd like to hear something from you first. Where do you see, how do you define this unmet need and your experience and knowledge, what the Wish Foundation and you are doing to address that? Rajesh.
Thank you. Okay, so I think the numbers of questions you have asked, I will be taking at least 30 minutes to respond to each of them. But let me just start, especially because my foundation works, and the foundation that I really work, this foundation, it's called Vadvani Initiative for Sustainable Healthcare. Our focus is primarily the primary healthcare, and if you really see from the unmet need perspective, unmet needs are multiple in the primary healthcare. I'm not going to really bore you, but probably the starting with the lack of human resources is a larger issue. In some of the pockets, areas, which we all know is that almost 60% of human resources are not there. So if you really see how technology can really help us in meeting the unmet need there, Sanjay, and there are so many experts who have used the technology to reach out to the last mile from the impact perspective there. The second is, in terms of if you have the services of the doctor or the diagnostic there. And Dr. Sonal rightly really touched on during her keynote address that how many of those point-of-care devices or diagnostic devices have really reached the last nook and corner of India there? How those devices we are talking about, and medical fraternity is talking about, and Globe is talking about client-centric or patient-centric, health programming. How many of those devices are being taken to the closeness or vicinity of the client or the patient there? That's a major, the third part is that if you have these 1 and 2 available there, is that the capacity of human resources there. So how technology and the devices, or technologies and the devices can really help in building the capacity through in the doctors keep to you are talking about continuing medical college, but in the primary education, but in the primary domain, if you really see these refresher courses, through a capsule courses, using the technology and outreach devices to really train them and refresh their knowledge there. So that's something that the third one. And the fourth one is the advent of the AI and the machine learning. How this whole term of precision public health that we really talk, how in a public health domain, in a primary care, how precision and precise you can be so that the impact gets created there. If you really see that we and my institution has really faced this challenge over a period of time, be it urban and be it rural there, Dr. Ravi. If you really see this, this is a misnomer that from last mile perspective, urban needs have been met. No. In fact, over the last, since if you really see this, the advent of how the government has created a national rural health mission, and the portion and the size of the budget for the national rural health mission and the urbanization, the migration has impacted the cities there. I think there has been little focus, except the last couple of years, that the urban folks have been really identified as also, health deprived. Means that their unmet needs also needs to be addressed there. And I'm talking from the primary care and primary health care perspective. I won't really touch the tertiary or the secondary care, because that's the domain of the other esteemed panelists there. So the foundation has really dealt with over a period of time, and I was very happy, at the same time disappointed, that there's an innovator who approached us precisely 4 years back, and his booth is right on the corner. It's called Yostra technology there. 4 years back, when we really piloted their product, which is diagnostic in a suitcase there. It used to be 37 there. And we did this pilot in 10 sites of Rajasthan, and then through the paper that they published, and we also advocated the state, it really scaled up in the state, and then from there, the sky was the limit. Like, from BSF to Army to Navy, and everyone really procured their items there. So there is big scope for those kind of innovations within the public health and a primary care there. And yeah, I'm sorry, Ravi, I'm going to stop because I've between this.
I think that's right. I think I have a personal experience of, seeing a demo and maybe small piloting out Equester, the suitcase lab we're talking about. I'd definitely like to see all of you probably go back and see what is a nice suitcase carried. Everything is right inside, right from centrifuge to testing, right inside there. But I think what you're like, I'm a pathologist and I've been running labs and this small size, big size, very large size, specialized lab. One of my dreams is, can we have something called as path ATMs or path cafes, where you have a nice cafeteria, you walk in, a drop of blood, give you a sample. By the time you have your coffee, your reports are ready. The point of care testing and what's the scope probably out of the field? What's your experience about it? Because you are really working in the community very well.
Absolutely. So there are lots and lots of, over the last 4 years, we have piloted around 26 point of care devices. From a lab in suitcase to mobile ECG, 12 lead ECG there, to neonatal deafness there, both through an RCT, so both in a Savai Man Singh Jaipur hospital as well as in a primary health center to really see this. I think in terms of the learning, this is the big need for there. And why I'm saying is that at this point of time, the country is going through a major health overhaul there. The Health and Wellness Center concept, Prime Minister has this dream initiative called Ayushman Bharat. One is insurance, which I'm not going to talk. But the Health and Wellness Center is clearly the area that he demarcated 12 services there. And if you really see this, NCD, 3 of the common NCDs, cancer there, hypertension is there. In terms of maternal child health, their diagnostics are missing there. So you may have the services there, but if you don't have the diagnostics there, will that be completing the whole continuum of care? No, that's it. And I name that Yostra because normally in primary healthcare, what we have between Mohalla clinic that we manage for Government of Delhi and various primary health centers that we piloted and transformed and handed over to government in Rajasthan, is that commonly around 17 tests are being done in the primary healthcare, and that caters to the 90% of the diagnostic there. If those 17 tests can be done in the neighborhood, maybe primary health center, maybe sub-centers which catering to around 5,000, 3 to 5,000 population, I think that will be the game changer. So the current ecosystem that we are in at this point of time, where, and I'm not propagating any party or any political person, but the PMO's dedication to move the health and wellness centers together with the push of bringing money and human resources there, and how these small devices can really complete the ecosystem, the life cycle one and the care part. I think that will be the game, and that's a big opportunity.
Yeah, that's nice to hear that. Probably, I'm hoping I'm close to my dream getting fulfilled. We probably have similar kind of a path cafes. I think coming to the next, I think one of the important the unmet health need is today is about blood transfusion. We have an expert with us, Dr. Khillan, next to us. I think I'd like to hear from you. I mean, what are the the innovations happening from the blood transfusion and the blood banking industry, and of course, how the quality is being maintained on that aspect of it.
Good afternoon. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers and Sir also for giving me this opportunity to talk about blood banking, which is apart from the diagnostics, which everybody talks, nobody talks about blood banking. So if you have a list of things in which the government also wants to work or anybody wants to work, then blood bank is part of the hospital. It's not something separate. But yes, we have to think about that. Without that, even a hospital or anything which is on the diagnostic part or the treatment part cannot finally work. As far as the quality part that he is asking, or sir is mentioning, the blood banking has, in India, is still, you can say, fragmented. I think Australia has one of the best, because the policies, the procedures, and the implementation and training, which all is required for anything to function smoothly, is there with their systems. In India, we don't have a centralized system of blood banking. We have every hospital having its own blood bank. And then we have so many blood banks coming up which are individual, which are private. So there are regulatory authorities which are also working in a very, not a very, you can say, giving it a, just licensing is there, and after that the quality needs to be really looked into. But okay, we are improving. Improving in the sense there is corporatization, which is helping to at least bring in the diagnostics, which is bringing in the technologies from outside, and they are, maybe it is market driven, but they are providing the training also for that. So we have changed our system of blood banking from whole blood to the leuco-filtered blood bags, where the filtration is done at the blood bank itself. WBCs are removed, the chances of transfusion reactions are considerably reduced, and you have a bag which is considerably safe to transfuse with very good quality. Then you also have the diagnostic tests, which although the government mandates to ELISA, we are at the corporate levels, we are doing Kamini, we are also doing NAT testing, and many of the government hospitals also have adopted this particular technology to improve upon the quality. So these things are being incorporated to improve upon the quality. But what is the unmet need for this particular, you can say, the branch? If we talk of unmet part, then we can talk of two ends. One is the administration part at the patient level care, and the one is the diagnostic, and the third is the, you can say, the blood bags, or the actual reagent or kit level, or the consumable, which is, I think blood bag is the most important. If you look into the list of the consumables which a blood bank could be using, then almost 70 to 80% of that part goes into the blood bag itself. And why I'm mentioning this blood bag here is because this is something which is with PVC, with DEHP. So with the climate change, with the environmental problems, a PVC-free plastic bag is yet not available at the ground level, which is cost effective. People are working on it, but this is one of the unmet needs, keeping the future of the climate or the climate change, whatever is happening. This is something which the innovators should look into and try to find out a PVC-free bag for red cell. There is a bag which is there for FFP, for the platelets, but there is none for RBCs, which can actually, which is a major chunk of the collection process. The second important thing, which as a part of the unmet need, is the patient care. So we talk of the administration of blood, and we talk of transfusion reactions. So I was having a discussion with some of the colleagues here, and we actually found out that, again, AI can help. We can create data points where we can develop apps with the identification of the transfusion reactions, whether they are occurring or whether they are about to occur. They can be identified, and a proper management can be done right then and there. And as I was just searching through Google, I think I did find one app which Australia is already running. It's called Australia app, which is, again, looking into the transfusion reaction parts as well as administration and everything, right from vein to vein, you can say, the collection to the end. So these are the two unmet needs, which I think there are so many of them, but these are the two which I would like to highlight. And rest is, we can always go on improving the quality, which involves the improvement in policy, processes, the training, everything can help overall in improvement in the things.
Thank you, Dr. Khalid. I think probably one of the things, what I've been hearing, I don't know much about it, probably it's more of the new innovations or something which are coming on molecular blood grouping. Because there has always been an perspective of best of the blood grouping and cross-matching, there are some reactions do happen here and there. We feel where we gone wrong. I think the new advancement is probably looking in the molecular blood grouping. What do you have to say?
Yeah. Again, sir, as far as Europe is concerned, as far as America is concerned, or even Australia is concerned, these are a few of the things that are well established. People are already doing genotyping of the blood banking for problem cases. But this is one market which, or one niche market basically, I would say, which needs to be brought in. 10 years back, there was immunohematology, the antibody identification protocols which needed to be introduced, which were introduced, and now after 10 years, we have almost all big hospitals doing immunohematology at serology level. But then, next 5 years, we'll see the growth of the genotyping in the blood bank. We need it for 3-4 major criteria. People where there is a mother and, pregnant females, and you have got RHD difference between mother and the baby. There it is helping. People who are, or children who are having multiple transfusions like thalassemia and cancer patients, so there is formation of antibodies, so alloimmunizations, where there is formation of antibody and becomes difficult to give a matched blood if we are doing only the antibody identification. We are still not able to do a lot of it. The problem is that there is a large-scale identification of antigens or large-scale molecular typing of the blood bag of the patient, or the donors is not there. So these things are not scalable to the Indian scenario right now. And there is nobody in the market to bring those things, genotype per se. There is this Immunohematology Institute in Mumbai, where you are having one person doing sometimes a little sample they are taking and doing it for some people. But to do it, to identify the prevalence is the most important. Unless until you identify the prevalence, you don't know which antigen is important. Recently, there was an Indian antigen was identified in the Indian population, and it has been identified world now, in the world also. So these things we yet don't know what is prevalent in. There's many a times we are using the cell panels which are brought from Europe, which are European panels. Now they are not representing the antigens of the Indian population. So we do find that identification of the antibody becomes difficult, and we are not able to provide blood for the patient, and we have to give the best match, which is, you can say, least incompatible blood. So these are some of the ground reality problems which come in. Here the genotype comes into being, and it really helps in such cases.
I think, right, I think probably the future lies in a validation kind of a thing, and we probably look forward to have much more finer blood grouping and probably less of a reaction. And of course, availability of blood is always an unmet need. I think that's because of app and various registries and everything is digitalized, the better shelf life of the blood and the products available, probably that need is going to be fulfilled. Right. Thank you so much. Moving on to Dr. Sunita, I think you have expert in robotics and you have been doing intelligent diagnostics. In Indian scenario, I think I'll like to see here, because we have been hearing a lot about robotic surgeries and robots working in pharmacies, delivering the medicines out there, but we'd like to throw something, where does it fit in India? What are the innovations that are happening, and how can it fulfill my unmet need? Probably one area I can think about is skill. More probably you can talk about it. Sunita, please.
Thank you. And first of all, again, I would like to start with thanking the organizers, giving me this opportunity to express my views. And I would start with a disclaimer first, that any views or opinions hereupon are my personal views based on my expertise, and I'm solely responsible in case any media personnel are there in the audience, not representing necessarily my organization, if that's fine. As there was lots of talk in the inaugural session itself, that you need multidisciplinarity in order to innovate. I would say robotics is the most versatile in terms of how many rather interdisciplinary things that it has inculcated in. And medical device technologies are one of the leading medical device industries in healthcare based upon innovation. So you have IT-enabled devices, diagnostics, as well again, augmented reality or artificial intelligence related. So as Dr. Gaur said earlier, that the clinical unmet need actually depends upon which stakeholder is bringing it. And there are just too many stakeholders. I am not hearing much about the patient's relatives. They also have an important role in that. They are some kind of pseudo service providers as well in the whole scenario. So I will start with that there are two different types. You can say that one could be disruptive technologies and other is improving incremental technologies. So medical robotics basically is one of the disruptive technologies that came more than a decade ago. And that was driven by a big paradigm shift that happened in surgical arena, which was open surgery to minimally invasive surgery, and the challenges that clinicians had in giving that minimally invasive surgery in an effective manner. So one which was the hand-eye coordination, because you're working somewhere else and you're operating a three-dimensional space, but you're looking in the two-dimensional video output. Secondly, the dexterity of human hand in very confined spaces. That was one of the biggest challenges. And I would say that the human fatigue, because this was a new thing, the way they were operating on the patients was not directly interacting with the patients, but through long, slender tools, which they were not much practiced into. So that was helped by machine taking over partly human actions. And I would say now the main change or clinical need that comes to us, so I'm not a clinician, I'm not a medical expert, I am rather, you can say, solution provider or innovator, inventor in that range. So most of the clinical needs, people approach us with that instead of we coming up. And being in the academia, I would say that we don't work with only the state-of-art best practices, but we are supposed to do the next practices. So in the next, we would rather see 20 years in future instead of what's existing right now. And what we see, the limitations of the existing robotic systems, which I hope many of you have already hands-on experience on that, the Da Vinci system. First of all, more dedicated and customized systems rather than a generic one, which can go almost throughout the whole human torso or trans-abdominal reach. So there are many procedures which are very intricate, and we can't just club them under the same laparoscopic thing. So neurosurgery, for example, optical operations procedures, they require completely different systems and dedicated systems. So that's one of the things that we are working towards. The second thing is the long, slender equipment which are used in MIS, minimally invasive surgery. They lack dexterity, they lack tactile and haptics. Even robot lacks tactile and haptics. So giving the surgeon more hands-on feel with the tissue that you are working on, because our human tissue is very dynamic in nature. Depending upon the tool-tissue interaction, it changes differently. That's why doctors, clinicians are still practicing. It's case-by-case basis. So giving diagnostics during the operation, closing the surgical feedback loop, so that you have real-time information, which may not be very complete information, but at least giving some feedback during the operation. So one such system that we devised, we call FUSBOTS, Focused Ultrasound Surgery Robot, which is basically non-invasive surgery using high-intensity focused ultrasound and using multiple ultrasound sources with very high intensity to be targeting inside human body non-invasively. So the big paradigm shift that I talked about in 80s was open surgery to keyhole surgery. Now it is no-hole surgery. And as some also say it, from knife to needle. The slender instruments were like needles to nothing. So we are working towards that kind of paradigm. Thank you.
I think one of the area of what Chauhan works, the intelligent diagnostics he's talking about. I probably feel maybe the era is not far away when probably sitting here, when you look into your mobile phone, and today we're talking about contact lenses once you're wearing, and which keep giving you continuous sugar levels actually. So with the mobile phone, the frequency, the modulation of your voice, the tremor, the skin and touch, and maybe the heart rate and the pulse rate, all this probably, the spot probably have a diagnostic, right? That's what probably looking for. I think it's going to be virtual reality. What do you think, or just still dream about?
So I would say that the long training that humans get as a clinician, particularly for surgery, I will say, because I'm more into the surgical and treatment domain, and diagnostics being in the intraoperative way. Though we also do intraoperative and preoperative surgical registration. That means you may have images preoperatively from CT, MRI, but you only have ultrasound available during the operation to give you feedback. So how do we actually relate that information and then guide our tools to reach to targeted positions? So from that point of view, AI helps us that all the system-related information is with us. All the preoperative information is with it. That too for dedicated, that customized patient information is with us. So that kind of prior information really helps. But I would say instead of going directly into the AI, it's a safety critical domain. So we would rather go in an augmented reality fashion initially. And maybe parts of the surgery or parts of the treatment could be completely autonomous, taken by the robot, but human surgeons play a very vital role while doing any such treatment.
Thank you so much. I think I'm really hoping for the future, and probably the future will come fast, right? Moving on to our next panelist, Dr. Sanjay. Sanjay, you are an expert into podiatric surgery. You have worked in telemedicine in past. You work a lot on diabetes, and diabetes is, of course, probably the biggest challenge in the country. We're going to be the world population of diabetic, probably I think another 2020 that we're talking about. Treatments, I think if you walk across India from one corner to every and you tell something about sugar, everybody has some suggestions to give it to you. Oh, do this, eat this, do this. I mean, still in spite of that, the actual challenge to address the diabetes and the problems and complications is unmet, right? And I hear something from you on that aspect.
Thanks, Dr. Ravi, and take this opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting me here. I'm going to wear the hat of a clinician and an innovator at this point of time. And I would like to establish the unmet need by show of hands, probably. So how many of you have accompanied your relatives or yourselves and went to a diabetologist or a physician and seen the physician consulting your relatives or friends? Raise your hands, please. A few of them. Okay. So out of this 5-6 people that we saw, how many physicians whom you have interacted with or seen examining a diabetic patient have actually, the diabetologist has said, remove your footwear, let me see your footwear. Remove your footwear, let me see your foot. How many of the diabetologists have done that? 1 out of 5. And that is what the unmet need is today. So today, we have, as Dr. Ravi said, we have about 70 to 80 million diabetics in India, 444 million across the world, this is what it is said. And people talk about eye issues, diabetic retinopathy, nephropathy and things like that, and what is totally ignored is a diabetic foot disease. 30% of the diabetics in India suffer from a diabetic foot disease. 19% has a diabetic foot ulcer, which leads to amputation. In India itself, there are about 1.2 lakh registered amputations due to diabetes. Unregistered, we do not know. Across the world, there is, as I'm talking, by the time, like in the last 1 minute, 3 people would have lost their foot because of diabetes across the world. So this is the burden that we have, which is an unmet need. And as I said, as the set of questions that you asked, so one of the things as a foot surgeon that we saw was when the patients came to us at our tertiary care centers, we saw that they weren't screened for diabetic foot early stages. People, you yourself being in Delhi, being in Mumbai, being in Bangalore, not in the rural areas that you're talking about, in the cities itself, when people are taking regular treatment for their diabetes with their diabetologist, their foods are not screened. Even if they are screened, they are not managed as it has to be managed. And people come in at end stages where we will have to amputate them. So this was the unmet need that led to a innovation of a screening device for a diabetic foot. That is the innovator hat that I wear, and we have. So the challenge that we see was,
even though we educated the diabetologists that they need to screen for the food, the devices that they had for the screening were expensive, took a lot of space, needed a third party to implement the tests instead of the clinician himself doing it at the clinic. We were talking about point of care devices earlier, which said that it has to be done at that point of time, cannot go for some other calibration or a centrifuge or something like that being there. So that was the need, and there was supposed to be a device which can do that, not just for India but across the world. We didn't have anything across the world which could just screen for diabetic neuropathy at the clinic level, and that was the unmet need that led to an innovation of a device today from India with the support of BIRAC, with the support of the government of India and the government of Karnataka. We are able to sell this across the world today from India.
I think we will probably move on to Philip. I think it is coming to you last probably. After that, probably have more interactive questions. Why I came? Because you're an expert. Philips is, of course, CEO, founder of Nano4, I mentioned. And he an expert into the pre-launch, launch, and post-launch. And that's what we're talking about here, because the what's required and how do we introduce that in the market and how we take it forward to rural areas and probably the actual requirement with the last man out of the post. They need all this. Then you have Western wisdom probably. How we can get it here? Because you have been now, you've seen the Indian healthcare scenario, the challenges out here. In spite of challenges, the people working out and doing wonderful jobs, right? Doctors doing almost as good as what's done in the Western world. But I'd like to hear something from you, because you have been working, say, probably on tuberculosis is one area, maybe because, and the other devices and diagnostics. Because TB, in spite of whatever we say, remains the biggest diagnostic challenge today to the clinician today. So from tuberculosis and any other thing, something like to share from you, how do you see the world and how do you address the unmet needs from the diagnostics? Please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. It's an honor for me. And in fact, coming from Portugal, in the last 3 years, I've been dedicated to Nano4, which is a company that developed incorporated technology from the Science and Technology University in Lisbon, Portugal, to do the translation. So it's called nanoparticles applied to diagnostics. So it's a platform, and our first indication is tuberculosis. Currently, we are doing the translation in order to launch it into the markets. When Dr. Gaur said I'm an expert on launching and pre-launching product, it's been very kind. Actually, I've launched in my past life and in the biotechnology world 2 products in the markets, and now I'm launching this new product on TB. But having a step back on how to launch a product, I think it's extremely important. And if we have here in the room entrepreneurs, because I'm for sure that we have, the first part of a company, especially a startup company, is a company that is going to challenge the impossible and execute what is possible. And what can be possible to launch a product in the market if it is a local market or much more difficult at a global scale, is to get the infrastructure. And when I say the infrastructure, I have to get the production in place. And to have a production in place, one of the challenges is the scale of the production, is to have it scalable. And to have it scalable, you need to have standards in the production. And you only can get that if you have the ISOs in place. So in Europe, for Europe, it's the ISO 13485 and the 9001. So this is the first step to launch a product in the market. The second part, which is completely linked to the marketing part, and normally people don't pay attention, or there are few people that pay attention, is the regulatory affairs. The regulatory affairs, it's one of the most important parts of launching a product, regardless if it is a diagnostic or a drug in the market. It will pave the future of the company, and it will pave the future of the patient emphasize as the marketing part as we know it, and as the big corporations, they do it, and they do it very well. And I've spent 12 years of my professional life at Genzyme, and it was one that was acquired by Sanofi, and that launched for drugs for brain disorders, and they did also marketing. But the startup doesn't have the needs and the means to do a proper market or a global market. So what has to do, and this is the third step, is to go through local partners or even global partners as corporations, or even for countries that have some needs, like India, for instance. And funnily, my talk on tuberculosis going through NGO, and even approaching WHO. These kind of organizations will do the last mile of launching the product.
Great, Philippe, I think, yeah. We have now very time is limited, but I'd like to definitely have, take 5 minutes from the organizers, etc. Is there anything you want to add on here? You like to something, Rajesh? Something what we've been talking, anything to add on? 1 minute, we can talk something.
Well, I think if you really ask me, this is the best time for any innovator, given the context that we are working in the country with all these startup India, Make in India, institutions like BIREC. The whole ecosystem is quite revigorated at this point of time. I think more and more innovators need to really dare to bring those kind of technologies, not to shy away. And as far as Philip has really touched on that, if you can really build your platform on a robust data science, that's something can be really acceptable and sellable in this. In terms of the scale, Dr. Ravi, yeah, I think, again, I give you one glimpse of health and wellness, and no one has any clue what to do and what to do. The sky will be the limit for the scale one. And within the government is the largest buyer there. So there is a big scope to scale. The product, there are certain issues related to regulatory issues within India also, and you all know that very well. But the system is also being very conducive gradually in others. In terms of the procurement, we know that the GEMS at times becomes a bottleneck, the central procurement system, especially from medtech and innovation point of view. But that's also being very receptive, and as far as I heard, we have colleagues from National Innovation Unit of Ayushman Bharat, that even the GEMS are being very positively looking into that kind of aspect, so that they create a more receptive environment for the innovator.
Yeah. Dr. Sunita? We just have 1 minute, that's it probably.
All right, so I'll try to sum up in 1 minute. That, as I said, we are into the next practices. That means in near future, you will see more and more robotics and AI into the surgical rooms, so operating rooms, particularly more dedicated and customized robotic structures, which do specialized surgery rather than the generic one.
Dr. Sonal, would you like to add on something?
Yes, this has been a very interesting discussion as far as I can see, and we've talked about a lot on lab on a chip technology and other things, but as an infectious disease diagnostic person and as an educator, I feel the next market for innovators should be catered around medical education. Now, that is one area which is obviously neglected in many parts. We all think about technologies, taking technology to doorstep of patients, but we do not think about taking a continuing medical education programs to the doorstep of doctors, because if we are developing so much, then it has to reach the grassroots medical person also. The other thing would be that as a person who works in antimicrobial resistance, I feel, I really wait for something which can, in a moment, tell me that yes, this patient is viral and not bacterial, and I need not prescribe an antibiotic to this person. And if, as a stewardship component, as an antibiotic steward, if I can know on my mobile app that yes, this medicine has been prescribed by somebody sitting in my OPD, which was not warranted, I think I'm really waiting for that day to come, because that will really limit, because AMR has been labeled as the next public health problem by WHO, and we all have to think on those lines as to how much can we limit the prescription of these antibiotics. So that's one food for thought I would like to leave you upon, that think on that and innovate something which, as a point of care device, can tell me exactly that I don't need to prescribe antibiotic for this patient.
Thank you. I think, Sanjay, you had just 30 seconds, right?
More than the summing up, I had a request. I see that there have been a lot of hospital administrators here and key influential persons. So one of the key challenges for innovators that we find is, as you also mentioned, the clinical data validation. And when we go out to the hospitals to test out our equipments and all those things, what we need to pay out is a huge sums. I don't have to name the hospital, but for one of the devices that we wanted to test out for 20 patients, we had to pay about 13 lakhs. And that's a huge amount that startups in India will have to pay up, and not everybody would be lucky to have deep pockets. So if hospitals or people with a certain influence here can look out something where we can test these equipments that are invented in India, innovated in India at much lower cost, that would be great.
You want to say something? No. I think we just have finished off the time, right? I think I'd like to say thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the panelists. And we have met at this platform to understand the unmet needs. I think this itself is probably one of the important steps. We identify what are unmet needs, and I'm sure as we move forward, we'll be able to address all these unmet needs by these kind of meetings and the forums, and probably taking it to the actual delivery model and making a healthcare successful. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody out there.
Thank you, Dr. Gaur. I would like you to also do the honors of presenting the speakers with some mementos.